The business savvy that Ivan hoped would bring success in the tourist trade led him to suggest to Alberto that they build a porch at the back of the house directly overlooking the Atlantic, which sometimes lapped the foundation of the house at high tide. The fishing fleet now anchored picturesquely right behind Alberto's house. Larger boats needed deeper moorings than the old sailboats. This had forced abandonment of the old reef-protected harbor for the slightly rougher area just south, right behind the seaward side of street down there. Ivan and Alberto were correct in thinking that the fresh air and harbor view would appeal to outsiders. Each weekend, city people drank beer and ate seafood snacks in Alberto's outdoor bar. A few houses down, Aunt Dahlia's juice bar also sold beer but specialized in juice and ice cream. Dahlia also had a porch and a view. Her success had been built on sales to hippies in the late 1960s and early 70s. Young outsiders, along with the dozen former hippies who'd stayed on, still brought Dahlia substantial business in 1980. A gap in construction that had formerly separated the end of street down there from the summer houses further south was being filled in. A new restaurant, Aaron Bepe's fanciest, with bow-tied waiters, just opened on the site where Francisca, Aaron Bepe's slave-owning landlord, had once defended her coconut trees against the pranks of the village boys. A former hippie, now considered a permanent resident, or a morador, ran a restaurant, bar, and rooming house just beyond. He rented filthy indoor rooms and bamboo cabanas just seaward of the restaurant under the coconut trees. All of these were occupied one Sunday afternoon. Since I saw few bathers in the nearby Atlantic, I assumed these shacks were the local version of the motels of high turnover, places for rapid sexual encounters located near the beaches of Salvador and Rio de Janeiro. It was still true, I was told, that the number of city people who came to Aaron Bepe on Sundays in August was nothing compared to the summertime tourism. Edele, who ran Claudia's restaurant, reported that her clientele consisted almost entirely of outsiders. Tibras officials came 2 or 3 times a week throughout the year. Although Edele never knew in advance when they would come, electricity and refrigeration let her keep fish on hand to cook when her customers arrived. Unlike the slow winter trade, Edele reported good business even on weekdays in summer. In winter, she served 25 to 30 Sunday meals. The number doubled in the summer. Illustrating the extent of villagers' monetary reliance on outsiders were complaints about reduced tourism and business during 1980. Attributable to the gasoline shortage, Aaron Bepe too felt the global energy crunch of 1980. Business had been much better in the winter of 1979, people said. As lotting progressed, landowner George Camos had opened a real estate office in Aaron Bepe, but he rarely did business there himself, leaving such matters to his younger brother and brother-in-law. With so many social ties to Aaron Bepe, George found it hard to say no to villagers when they asked for special consideration. For example, an extension of the deadline for a monthly payment. His brother-in-law acted as the hard-nosed landlord. George, educated an upwardly mobile scion of the landowning family that Aaron Beperos had known for generations, would forever be considered the village patron. But with Prudencio, his longtime local agent, who had died during our absence, no longer available as buffer and mentor, George found the patron's role more uncomfortable than ever. After all, he told us, I'm a professional engineer. His career demanded frequent travel, often abroad. Tiring of real estate, George complained, I don't make much money selling lots. Prices are low, and there are all kinds of subdivision expenses that eat up most of my profits. In place of villagers' previous uncertainty about the lotting scheme was general acceptance of continued sales to outsiders and growth. A few people complained. One woman thought that outsiders were being favored in lot sales. Some, she said, had bought up 2 or 3 lots, leaving little choice for villagers who wanted to live near their relatives. You'd think he might leave land for people from here, she said. George told us he wished to do just that, but his relatives, who were much more involved in sales than he was, appeared to be less concerned with social ties and more interested in economic gains. In August 1980, lots were selling for 35,000 cruzeros, about $600 cash, but most buyers were putting down 10,000 cruzeros and paying 2,000 cruzeros monthly for 2 years. Because of economic changes to be described in Chapter 8. This pricing put lot ownership beyond the means of most of the fishermen. Local real estate values had increased faster than inflation as the national economic miracle had continued, though it slowed down a bit. The flow of cash through the community had permitted many villagers to improve their homes. Only 15% of houses surveyed in southern Arambepe in 1980 were wattle and daub, whereas most had been in 1960s. Most were brick with tile roofs. Housing had also improved in Carunas. Most of that settlement's 100 houses, a doubling since 1973, were brick. During our stay, one sold to city people for the equivalent of $600 cash, well beyond the income of an ordinary fisherman. One reason the houses in the Carunas were more substantial was the increasing number of salaried workers. Many of these were local Tibris employees who now numbered 40, 17% of Arambepe's adult male workers. Outsiders too were buying in Coronas. In the new satellite village of Volta do Robalo, and throughout the area being subdivided, viewing any developed land near the beach as a good investment. Lots were also being sold on both sides of the Coconut Highway near the turnoff to Arambepe. Volta de Robala on the northeast corner already had 2 rows of houses, about 25 completed and another 20 under construction. A successful captain owner who had just built a house in Volta overlooking the lagoon had also bought 3 adjacent lots for his children, was enjoying his view while it lasted. He envisioned row after row of houses extending down the high water mark of the lagoon. With lotting progress on both sides of the highway and with houses projected for the area between Volta and the lagoon, Alberto remarked that Arambepe would soon be a city. At nightfall from the highway, viewing coconut palms outlined by hundreds of electric lights, Alberto and I agreed about Arambepe's impending urbanization and its lingering beauty. Because of the brevity of my 1980 stay, I didn't try to census Arambepe. Talking with the head statistician in the municipal seat, I learned that a sample done in 1977 had estimated 2,500 to 3,000 people in the area from Arambepe to the Jacupi River, 11 kilometers north. The statistician thought that by the 1980 census, Arambepe's population would exceed 2,500. This was a reasonable assumption considering there were more than 600 houses in Arambepe and its satellites. The actual 1980 census figures turned out to be 617 houses and 1,561 people, which seemed low to me. Arambepe's population remains difficult to census accurately because so many people who own homes in the village live there only part of the year. I did my own quick census and survey of 130 houses in southern Arambepe. This included both sides of the street down there, plus the new streets to the west, where houses had been built right up to the high water mark of the lagoon. Confirming the importance of our outside and absentee ownership, 58% of the 130 dwellings belonged to non-Arambeperos. Just 47% of the houses were inhabited year-round by any one owner or renter. Rentals were prominent in southern Arambepe as they were throughout the village. In winter 1973, when the pattern of tourism and part-time residents was beginning, just 10% of the houses were rented and only 34% had been rented at least once. By 1980, these figures had risen to 30 and 50% respectively. There was a continuing difference between weekend visitors and wealthy outsiders who sought leisure in Arambepe. The owners of the comfortable vacation homes on the town's northern and southern fringes were wealthy outsiders who belonged to a separate and distant social world. They maintained their aloofness from villagers and from the outsiders who did their tourism in the village proper. The outsiders who have built, bought, or rented houses in Arambepe proper are not the aloof elites of the northern and southern edges. Most belong to the lower middle class and thus are similar both to weekend tourists and to the fallen gentry with whom villagers have dealt for decades. Although encounters with outsiders are more regular and take place for different reasons now, villagers' behavior with them isn't very different than it was during the 1960s. Most Arambeperos haven't begun to kowtow to city folk, as a few observations from Alberto's bar will illustrate. One Sunday, a group of strangers walked up from the beach to Alberto's porch and asked if cold beer was available. Alberto's daughter and son-in-law ignored them, continuing an animated conversation with a regular customer, Milton, a city man who rented a house across the street for weekend use. When Alberto's daughter eventually offered to take the strangers' orders, they asked for seafood snacks to accompany their beer. She told them that the crabs Alberto usually bought on Sunday from the river fishermen hadn't arrived that week. Then the tourists left. The interactions of Alberto and his family with Milton also illustrate villagers maintain their customary, non-ubiquitous behavior patterns with most outsiders. Alberto called Milton his buddy, and their joking suggested a familiar long-term relationship. Milton told me he had first visited Arambepe during the 1940s when he had met Alberto. Once the village opened up, he had rented a house for a weekend in summer use. He always drank at Alberto's bar. Because of Milton's leathered and sunburned skin and lack of teeth, I was suspicious of his claim to be a member of the middle class, especially when he urinated off Alberto's porch, announcing to me that he was just looking at the ocean. West of street down there are several new dwellings, most belonging to city people. Many owners use them only in summer, and some houses have mammoth gates that are chained and padlocked, following an urban Brazilian custom designed to deter thieves. Some houses are surrounded by high masonry walls with broken glass cemented to the top. This gives them, to paraphrase archaeologist Gerald Milanich, a concentration camp atmosphere. Similar homes have been built due west of all of Arambepe's traditional streets.